And we had to do some smack talking with the brother, and let him know and all that kind of stuff. But she got it. She saw how much I loved it. Tom and I talked about how it's that one or two shots that get you to come back, in those moments. And she had a couple of those, and so she got excited. But one thing that I think struck me is she had said, I like doing what Dad loves to do. And just being able to do it together, there was something really special about that. We're saved by grace. Christ demonstrated that love to us, and then he recruited us for this mission that he's on. And out of gratitude, we kind of respond to that. But I realized, even in that example of Alyssa, it's much more than that. That what we really got to get to is we have to have that kind of desire and love to where we say, we do it because Christ loves to do it. And I love to do what Christ loves to do. Kind of an aside to that, we talk about blessing and experiencing, God blessing us and things. And I get that now because every time I go out with Alyssa, we swing by a sporting goods store. We went out and picked her up the other day, and I says, okay, I'll go with you because I got a couple stops. So where do you want to go? Well, we got to go play against sports and maybe Dick's Sporting Goods. And she comes along and she's like, does she really need a glove? Yes, she needs a glove. And she needs a pitching wedge. And she needs a hybrid to work in the field. She's got to have these things. These are necessary in the game. I haven't even talked to her about the shoes yet. That's a later thing. So don't say anything to her yet because I'm holding that back yet. But I get it in the idea that seeing her enjoying doing what I love to do, I want to bless her with that as much as I can. It makes the thing even better. And I think about when we have a desire to do what Christ wants to do, and we live our faith the way Christ wants to live it, God blesses that. Not out of hey, thanks, here's a 20, go buy yourself something. No, he blesses that experience so that we get to enjoy it with him, and we're brought into all of that, and he gives us everything that we need to be able to have that kind of an experience. You got to have a desire to want to win if you're going to run in this Christian faith. Second thing Paul says, though, is this: for those that want to win, not only do they have to have the desire, but they have to have discipline. Verse 25, he says, everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. All of us understand, I would imagine, that it takes discipline to be a great athlete. I know we look at them and thinking, I could do that. That didn't look hard. But then we realize, well, wait a minute. It does take a lot of discipline. When you hear that they train constantly, they watch what they eat, what they do. If there's, it's a daily routine that they put in their lifestyle. If there's anything that's going to take them away from that, they eliminate it out of their routine because they have a dream and they're pursuing it, and they have to be able to discipline themselves to do what's necessary to accomplish that particular dream. They're not like me in the run, where I'll just do it today and it'll happen. In fact, even in Michael Phelps, he kind of went 2 years and then he got into it. And, fortunately, he was trained enough to where coming back in 2 years instead of 4 was enough. But, some have said they wonder if he would have trained all 4 years, what could he have done? You heard he did a lot, but, it has an impact. In fact, even one of the races where he lost just by a second, kind of the opposite of what happened before, one of the commentators says, when you're skilled at this, and he was doing the butterfly, I won't mimic it too much, but normally you got to come in hard right into tap. And so he was a little short, and so he kind of glided into tap. Well, in that moment, the guy next to him came in hard and beat him by, hundredths of a second. Well, a commentator had said that, you get to a point where you have a feel and you know the pace that you have so that that doesn't happen, where you end up a little short, when you get there. That you are pacing yourself, the way you come out, everything, it becomes a natural feel. And so you wonder whether or not some of that is lost along the process. But the idea is that there's discipline involved. But to grow as Christian in our faith, it takes discipline. There are so many things that pull us away from our faith. The minute we move away, and if we stay away from the church for a little bit, we lose it. If we're not reading a little bit, we lose it. It's just our natural drift is to be pulled away. And so it takes an effort to kind of get back to what God wants us to do and to stay and to really grow in that kind of a relationship that we're called to live. And the Bible describes us, these habits or these disciplines in our life that align us with God. That's what they do. There's no magic to them, and yet they are part of the routines of our life that when we practice them, help us in our faith and growing, and we experience God. Richard Foster, in his book Celebration of Discipline, he lists kind of three main areas. He talks about inward disciplines: prayer and study and meditation and memorization and several more. These are all things that we do that help us grow inwardly in our faith and our understanding of Christ. He talks about outwardly ones: service and simplicity and Sabbath, these things that we practice as well, that all help us grow. And then he talks about corporate ones: worship, celebration, things that we do in community with others. Every one of those is a discipline. We don't come here because it's like, okay, I'm a member and I want to get my money's worth, or we don't come because we're obligated. We come because it's a practice that when we come together, we anticipate by showing up on a Sunday that God is going to do something, and we're going to experience Him in a new, fresh way. He's going to speak to me in a new way. I'm going to learn something more, and I'm going to grow as a result of my experience. It's all a part of that. That's why we do what we do, because we know God works in those things, and we create these habits in our life that they train us, and they help keep us on track. But a part of discipline, too, is not just that dedication to those practices, but also the filtering that we do, kind of like a spiritual grid in our life that keeps those things that are unhealthy out. We filter those things much like an athlete would, of what's going to be, what kind of foods should I not eat, what are those things that are going to distract me and keep you away. What we watch on TV, kind of the friends that we have, that we hang out with, how we use our time. All of these things are kind of things that we should be putting through some spiritual grid, where we ask ourselves something like, will this contribute in a positive way to my relationship with Christ? Or maybe, does this promote the mission of Christ and my own agenda? I mean, everything doesn't have to be so blatantly that, but it directly or indirectly, it complements that very thing. That, am I growing and maturing in my faith by what I'm doing right now in this area? And if it's not, we have to ask ourselves, then it's pulling me away. And should it even be in my life, or should I be eliminating it? And so the question then for us is, does your faith demonstrate the disciplines of a runner? For many of us, faith is more of a hobby than it is a sport. It's easily distracted. We put off disciplines. I mean, I'm as guilty as anybody. The practices easily fade away that we have, and when we do that, we begin to drift. Too many of those distractions in our life can neglect these disciplines and can pull us away. And so we shouldn't allow that. I mean, we should be, even in our own life as individuals in the church, it should be more the norm than it is the exception. Like, prayer becomes only in emergency cases kind of a thing, or any of that. It's a matter of, you would expect, you just expect it because it's what we do. I remember one time growing up, again, boy, all my memories, I need to move, because all my kids are as kids. We had a youth group, and I'd say to my parents, I don't know if I want to go to youth group, or church was the same way. And my parents were like, is this even a question in here? I mean, there's no question. It is what you do. You do it because it is what you do. You need to do it, and whether you like it or not, that's not the reason. You do it because you need to do it, because they understood it's a part of a discipline of our life. Even as kids, as we're growing up, it has to be a part of our life, even when we don't understand, because it's a practice that we create the opportunity for God to do great things when we have that part in our life. And so that's the disciplines that we need to be able to have. Paul talks, also, a third thing. He says, for those who want to win, we've got to run with direction. In verse 26, he says, therefore I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. There's a target. There's somewhere they're wanting to go, what they're wanting to do. And so again, he says, look at those athletes. They're focused. That they know what they need to do. They have a goal set in mind, and when they compete, they're competing very intentionally to accomplish that particular goal. They're not off running around and doing things, whatever is in their mood, but they're very focused in accomplishing that particular task that's ahead of them. And so Paul warns us really against that, allowing ourselves to be distracted from the prize. He knows without hesitation, if you look at Paul, what he lives for. Earlier in verses 22 and 23, Paul says, as an example for himself, he says, I have become all things to all people so that I may possibly, means I might have some. Now you look at that and think, well, he's all over the place. I'm all things to all people. But no, that's not what he's saying. He says, I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I might share in its blessings. In other words, I'm willing to adjust myself to whatever's necessary for that one goal to share the gospel with someone. That's my focus. That's my target. That's the direction in which I want to go. His mission is to reach people for Christ. That's what he's about. His passion is to know Christ in every situation in his life, to experience him in every one of those contexts. And in every one of those moments of life, he lives for Christ, and he experiences that sharing of the blessing. In fact, much like I talked about my daughter golfing together, he sees it as I'm doing the mission of Christ. I share in the blessing. I experience Christ working and the blessing of Christ working as if Christ is out buying me things because he wants me to experience the fullness of what I can have when I work with him. Do you know what you're running for? The prize in which you seek? You know, here we've shared it several times, but I'll share it again, on our vision statement, much of which we're working on as a group and as leaders too, is to help people experience the fullness of life that Christ came to give by loving God with all our heart, caring for others as he would himself, and serving Christ in the world with passion and purpose. Those are the targets in which we're wanting to be able to find. When you come to Heartland, that's what we're going to challenge you for, to love God above all else, to care for others as you would yourself, to serve Christ in the world with passion and purpose. That's what it's about. Too many people go the wrong direction because they're putting themselves as the prize. They're coming here, what can I gain from this for myself and to get better? And when you do that, you're off target and you're going the wrong direction and you're missing it. To get a comfortable life, to buy a new car, to retire early, all of these things are focusing off the very mission of what God is and Christ has come, which is to build up the kingdom of God, to be able to work in us and experience and transform us along the way. And so in your context right now, then, I want to challenge you to ask you the question, what direction is Jesus taking you? Does it involve forgiveness and sacrifice? Is it a shifting of priorities in your life, more intentional in your reaching out and coming along people and helping them in their situation? Are you living for Jesus and his mission and wanting to do it because of the joy of experiencing something that he loves to do? We need to know that we're going the right direction. The fourth thing, Paul talks about those who want to win. He says he win with determination. In verse 27, when he talks about this focus in this direction, he says, "No, I strike a blow to my body and make it a slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize." Athletes, I'm sure, would tell you, and I would think we would all know that to compete, it's not easy. It's not something that they can just, one day you wake up like I'm going to run, and that was easy. It involves commitment and sacrifice. It's grueling, it's challenging, it's painful at times. They're spent. They talk about the need to stay focused and not be distracted, overwhelmed, and how that can have a negative effect. They have to be very intentional in what they do and very determined in the task at hand in order to be successful. And when they lose focus of their goal to win, then it all starts to kind of fall apart. Great example is the badminton team, not down on them, but like 8 teams, were kicked out because they decided that in order to get a better position, they competed to lose. And they kept hitting in the net and trying to lose, and the crowd was yelling at them, because it was a lousy, obviously a competition. Well, they lost, first of all, their direction and their focus. They lost that desire to win. They were now in it for something else, and so therefore their determination, became so misguided that it disqualified them, the very thing Paul talks about. And they were kicked out because they no longer competed in the way that the game was intended. Another example was if you can tell I watched too much of it. I got a daughter at home. Does she ever watch it? Anyway. On the all-around for the gymnastics. Now, I don't like gymnastics, but anyway, the all-around, there was I can't remember her name all of a sudden, but the Russian girl, and every time that she made a mistake, the commentator said too, it's like she gave up. She stumbled on the pommel horse or whatever it's called, and she kind of fell, and instead of just catching herself once, she just kind of took 2 or 3 steps and stopped. And another one when she was on that long beam, I guess the beam. Anyway, leaned a little bit, and she just gave up, fell. I mean, there was no determination to try to be able to do it. And it impacted, of course, the way that she's able to perform in the whole thing.